Hey, what's happening, my Anodized friends? I am Chef Steve Anderson. You are watching the Anodized Chef, and today we're going to make a homemade chili. Check this out. Everybody loves a good chili. We're going to show you a real great one. It's steak, black beans, a bunch of vegetables. Check it out. So spring is here, and we're really thinking about, we're on the end of the braising and roasting and the slow meat process, but we're gonna do this chili in a crock pot as one last ditch effort, because this is a good one for even the spring and summertime when you wanna have something prepped ahead for dinner and you don't wanna come home in the heat and turn the oven on. It's a nice dish that can go in the crock pot, and we're gonna do a variation today. Everybody's got a different method or technique or different style of chili, but we're gonna do one that's really a wide range for everybody. We're gonna do steak, black beans with corn. We're gonna throw some veggies in it, and it's a real fundamental thing, and it's gonna be awesome. But let's get right into the meat here. And what I have is I've got about a pound of sirloin tip steak, and I have about a half a pound or one piece of boneless short rib. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna trim both of these and get them ready for the chili. And then what we'll do is we're gonna saute up the vegetables. I've got one small habanero. It's actually two halves. I've got a yellow and an orange, but it's a small habanero pepper. Very, very hot, so you want to use that in moderation. I have one large bell pepper, about a half-inch dice. Same thing with a red onion. I've got one large red onion, also half-inch dice. I've got about, I'd say about a cup and a half of whole kernel corn. I've got 2 cups of black beans, already parboiled, pre-cooked, and we're gonna, they were dry and I just boiled them in water to get them ready to go. Got a nice tablespoon of garlic. I got some fresh herbs here. I've got about a 1/4 cup of cilantro and fresh minced basil. I have 2 tablespoons of ground cumin, a 1/4 cup of chili powder, 1/4 cup of chili powder, a 28-ounce can of San Marzano tomatoes. I've got some olive oil we're gonna flash the pan with when we saute the steak, and a nice quart of beef stock. And that's really the root of the meal right here. So we're gonna get started. I'm gonna show you how to trim this steak down a little bit, and then we'll go right into the pan and get it started. So really, when you're looking at the steak, and you might want to come right in here, Bob, on this too, is you get this, it's a very, very tender cut of meat, but you always want to look at how the grain is going, so when you cut it, you can cut against the grain, so it's nice and tender. And see that? I'll show you two different examples. This is with the grain, and see how it's kind of stringy? So if you cut against the grain, you're gonna go this way and cut against the grain. And if you think about it, it's like a package of straws. If you take a package of straws and you roll them up like this, and then you slice them, whichever way you slice them. You can slice them one way and you have a whole bunch of little rounds like this, or if you slice them another way and you're looking at a whole long piece of straw. Well, it's like that when you eat it too. If you cut it the wrong way, it's gonna be a lot more chewy, whereas opposed to if you cut it the right way, it's gonna break right down in your fork and in the actual chili itself. So we're gonna cut it the right way against the grain, and you really wanna just kind of look at the direction of the meat grains as a whole, and then just slice against it. And you'll see there's a huge difference. I'll give you a perfect example so you can see what it looks like, what the difference is. You get that there, and then we'll go like this. Let me see. We'll go like this here. And then you get this here. And you can see the strands going this way as opposed to the mealy cut round pieces this way. So now let me just go ahead and finish chopping this up, and we'll get right into that chili. Now, the short rib piece is going to be done the same way, cutting it against the grain. And this might even give you a better example of what it looks like. And that's against the grain, and I'll show you one with the grain. If I cut it like this, you can see the string. See, can you see the difference? Yeah, I see the big difference there. Okay, now, let's finish this up. And we're just cutting it into thin strips. Now, it's gonna actually break down a little bit more in the chili as it cooks. It's gonna really get super tender because we're gonna cook it slow and low. And what we'll do is, it'll start to fall apart right in that stock as we're cooking it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. I've got a pan warming up behind me to get it all started. And we're gonna go ahead and crank it right up. We're gonna add about a tablespoon of the olive oil, and that's all we're gonna need to see a hem. We'll put about a tablespoon in there, and we just wanna get that steak searing up a little bit. And this is about the time that I'm gonna add my spice to it too. I'm going to add that tablespoon of garlic because I want it to brown up a little bit in there. I'm going to add about half of the amount of cumin that I reserved already. I'll put the other half in later on. Same thing with the chili powder. We're going to give that steak a nice crust with those spices, and that'll brown up in there nice. And then we'll add the rest of those spices, the measured amount, into the stock as it's cooking, and it'll help to flavor the sauce part of it as well. So we're gonna just brown this up, and actually Bob is the one that really wanted to put this recipe together. He wanted to use steak because he wanted to give it a nicer, maybe a more elegant chili as opposed to ground beef, and it's a little bit healthier for you too because it's a little bit leaner as well. So now we're gonna go ahead and throw all of our veggies in there because we're gonna want to saute the onions and the peppers, and I'm going to go ahead and throw that one habanero in there now because you want the heat and the oils to come out of that pepper. We'll put the bell peppers in there. Oh, the smells are out of control already. And I'll throw the corn right in there too. It's okay if the corn gets a little roasted flavor from that dry heat too. Nothing better than that. Now you can throw, from a hot pepper standpoint, there's so many different things you can do. Some people just like to do straight up Tabasco sauce. You could get a nice chipotle powder. You could buy the chipotles in adobo. We've actually used that in the sun-dried tomato mayo on the churrasco beef barbecue, the wrap that we did in one of the prior episodes. But that chipotle in adobo, again, you have to be careful with the heat unless you like it really hot. But we're trying to feed a variety of people here, so you got to be careful. But a little heat is always good. Okay, so we've got our vegetables in there. We're going to saute that up, let them brown up just a little bit, and then we'll take our beef stock. And what we're going to do there is we're going to deglaze the pan a little bit with that stock. Now you can add a little bit of wine to it. You don't have to. We're just going to go straight in with the, we've got a nice Merlot to go with it, but we're going to go straight in with the beef stock. And then we're going to let this simmer. And I guess about a quart of beef stock. And that changes everything. Now what we'll do is we'll just we'll bring this back up, let those vegetables get really soft in there, and it's almost like a soup right now. And a lot of people don't know that step to put stock in there. Some people think it's done with just tomato. See, I like mine with stock because it brings out more of that beef flavor, and it also helps, like I said, to soften up those vegetables ahead of time. And then the beef flavor is a little more pronounced along with the tomatoes. It kind of makes a better bite, in my opinion. So we're just going to let this cook for just a few minutes, and then we'll add our tomato product, we'll add our beans, we'll add our fresh herbs toward the end, and we're just going to let it cook slow and low. Like I said, we'll transfer it over to the crock pot and let it go. Then when we finish that, we're going to get into making cornbread. So stay with us, it's going to be awesome. So now that this has been simmering for a little while, we're going to go ahead and add our par-cooked beans, par-boiled. We're going to add them, and there's about 2 cups of black beans there. And you should really get the smells of this, man. Your whole kitchen is gonna give you a bouquet of chili flavor and scent, if you will. So now I'm gonna take that can of San Marzano tomato and I'm gonna throw them in there. It's okay that the tomatoes stay in there whole, because as it cooks slow and low, what's gonna happen is it's gonna break the tomatoes down very slow. And you can break some of them up with a spoon too if you really wanted to. I know it doesn't look like chili now, but as it cooks down nice and slow, holy smokes. So we've got the tomatoes in there. We're going to go ahead and add the rest of our spice. Remember the ground cumin and the chili powder that we talked about, because really what we want to do is we want to flavor that broth too that we're making there. And it's going to be it's a little bit loose now, but as it cooks nice and slow, it's going to cook the water out of it. It's going to become a little more concentrated in flavor. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep an eye on it. And in the recipe, you'll notice that I have to add 1.5 cups of water, and that's really kind of optional. You want to add that as you need it, as it's cooking. I would recommend keeping a cup of water handy and just add it as it simmers down just a little bit and gets a little bit thicker. You want to add, slowly add a little bit of water to it, just so it doesn't get too thick, too concentrated. So what I've done is I've added those two rounds of fresh herbs that we talked about too, the basil and the cilantro. They're going right in there. Stir that right up, and now this is just going to cook real slow. Now the last ingredient other than the water that we're going to add to this will be the edge, and I've got about a teaspoon of the edge on the recipe, but what we want to do is, again, adjust it to taste. You only want to add what you think it really needs, and I didn't add any salt to this at all yet, other than the salt, whatever concentration was in the beef stock. So you want to taste it and adjust it as needed, and I'm thinking with the edge, a teaspoon works. But again, you want to add a half a teaspoon, stir it up, taste it, and see what you need. So from this point now, we don't have to go any further on the stove. What we can do now is we just take this, convert it right into the crock pot, and then get it, like I said, put it on the side, let it cook nice and slow. And I would give it at least an hour. You could go 2, 3, 4 hours. It's one of those things you can set up late morning. Whoops. This is going to cook nice and slow. Look at the mess I made. Oh, we made too much slow. It's all right. Then what you're going to do is you're going to get that cup of water and set that aside, because once we cook this, let it cook, let it cook, let it cook, it's going to cook down. The water's going to cook out of it. Add that water to it and keep it going. So that way you maintain the level too. So we're going to set this aside. I'm going to clean up my mess a little bit and we'll get into the cornbread. So now that our chili is cooking away, we're going to set this aside and we're going to get right into the cornbread. And we're going to make a homemade cornbread from scratch to serve with this. So we've got a stick of butter, softened, and I use unsalted butter because we're going to add our own salt to it after, but I've got it nice and soft. And the trick to that is, when you go to start prepping your chili, take the butter out ahead of time, put it in a bowl and just set it aside. That way the butter will be nice and soft when you get to that point after you're done getting the chili components going. Come back and it'll be ready to go. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do a basic baking technique, almost like if you were making cookie dough. We're going to add the sugar, and we're going to add the eggs, and we're going to cream it all off, and then we're going to add our flour and stuff into it and make a nice cornbread batter. So we're going to start. Let's go through the ingredients real quick. I've got we talked about the sugar. I've got let's see, I've got 2/3 of a cup of white sugar. I have 1/4 cup of honey. I've got 2 eggs, 2 large eggs. I've got a half a teaspoon of salt and 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. I've got a 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and I have, let's see, I have 3/4 of a cup of cornmeal, and then I diced up some vegetables here just for color. I've got some whole kernel corn. I've got about 3/4 of a cup of whole kernel corn. I have a half a cup of diced red pepper, and I also have about 1/4 cup of fresh minced cilantro. And we're going to add that all into the ingredients as well. We're going to finish it with this half a cup of milk here. I'm not sure if I said that yet or not, but we're going to add that toward the end and just kind of make that batter mixed up. So what we're going to do, like I said first, is we're going to cream it off with the sugar. We're going to add the sugar into that butter and start our batter. And basically, you just want to combine the sugar and the butter together and mix that up nice. And that came together nice and quick. Always nice to have soft butter to work with. Then we're going to add our 2 eggs. And as you saw in some of our prior episodes, I like to put the eggs in a separate dish. And Bob, I promise I won't say that more than 3 times. So I always put the eggs in a separate dish just in case the shells come out. And you want to make sure you have, you don't want to put them right into the thing you're making. So we'll add our 2 eggs, thin that down just a little bit. We'll add our honey. Yeah, honey and cornbread. What? This is going to be awesome. All right, so then we'll add our salt. And we'll mix that in. And then we'll get into our dry stuff and start to make this thing into like a cake batter. And again, I've got the 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 3/4 of a cup of cornmeal, and we'll mix that in, and then we'll add our rising agent, the baking powder. Add that in there. And all these recipes will be found on the website, in the recipes section. And this is awesome. I can tell you firsthand, this comes out really good. And we're just gonna mix this, and it's gonna get real thick in a minute, but we still have to add that milk. And then what I wanna do too is at this point in the game, I'm gonna add those vegetables that we prepped up right in there. And that really adds the sex appeal to the batter, I'll tell you. So we'll fold this stuff right in. And we'll add that milk now, that half a cup of milk, we'll go right in there. Mix it right in. Cornbread from scratch. Never mind that mixed stuff. When it's this easy to make it from scratch, I recommend doing it all the time. Because most of the stuff is readily available in your pantry too, so you should be able to grab a hold of it and put this together. Another great idea too is if you want to leave the vegetables out and just keep that cornbread foundation that we talked about, minus the corn kernels and the peppers and the cilantro, you can use that as a corn muffin and take muffin tins and spray them and go ahead and make a nice breakfast muffin out of it too, same batter. So we've got this nice and mixed, and it's exactly the right consistency. We want it to look like cake batter. So I've taken a baking pan here, and this is a 9x12, and I've sprayed it. You can either spray it or you can take olive oil on a paper towel and just wipe the inside, just to kind of coat it so nothing, it won't stick, so the cornbread will pop right out for you. So now we've taken the liberty of going ahead to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and scrape this right into the bottom of the pan, and we're going to smooth it out. Until it's the size of a, so it's even across. And fill up the bottom. And then we're going to bake it on the top rack, not too close to the top, it's somewhere in the middle, at about 400 degrees for about 20 minutes. We'll fire this bad boy in there. And then when that comes out of the oven, we're going to go ahead and dish it up. Alright, so we're ready to go here. I did add that extra water, and I did add a little bit of the edge to this to kind of bring it together, but it's been cooking for a while, so look at that consistency, it's perfect. So we've actually cooked the cornbread, we've cooled it, we've taken it out of the pan, I've cut it into thirds, and then I've cut it into pieces here that we're going to serve along with it. And now we're going to go ahead and dish this chili out. Oh yeah, look at those chunks of meat in there. And the tomato and the beef stock just kind of married. What Bob and I did is we shredded up some smoked cheddar to put on top of this. And just put a little sprinkle on top of the chili like this so it melts into it nice and slow. Put one of these tasting spoons right in there. And this, my friends, is a great dinner. It's anytime. Sunday, summertime, anytime. For those of you checking us out on any other media stream other than the AnodizedChef.com, I wanted to say thank you first, but I also wanted to invite you to come and check out the site because you can see the bands that we have, some of their links to their home pages and stuff. You can also download the recipes. Those are all available on the website. And also, you can leave comments on the episodes, the actual episodes themselves. We do have a Facebook fan page as well. It's facebook.com/AnodizedChef. But you can leave comments right on the website. We'd love to see that. So thank you very much for your support again. So our featured wine for the episode today is the Red Diamond Merlot, and it's a 2008, I believe. Yes, 2008. And we actually chose this because it's really, really bold, and it pairs well with the chili because the chili's got so many different strong flavors. One of the things I got on it right away is the very, very strong nose. It had a very peppery smell right up front. And I'm thinking, wow, it's going to be really strong, but it's got a nice, bold, fruity plum flavor that comes through. But it is a perfect match with the chili. Something bold and red, and this is perfect. The Red Diamond Merlot. So we are going to feast on chili tonight. I want to thank you for joining us in our madness, magic, and mayhem. We'll see you next time. Oh yes. This is awesome. Oh, I know I say it all the time, top 10, but this is right up there, man. I'm telling you. Wow.